A Christian aid ministry says children are among a group of 17 missionaries kidnapped in Haiti. The group of 16 U.S. citizens and one Canadian includes 5 men, 7 women, and 5 children. Authorities say the 400 Mawozo gang was behind the bus abduction. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, do we know yet what these kidnappers really want?
This is a group that's fixated on Catholics and Christians as they have a history of abductions like this. This particular group had just finished a visit to a local orphanage in the capital city. And remember, Haiti is #1 in the world for abductions. That happens there very, very frequently. And now, more than ever, it's not a safe place to be, as you know. A lot of political disarray, and because of that uncertainty, obviously there's a lot of violence and a lot of gang violence, such as this one. So the gangs are ruling the streets right now. It remains leaderless. And this poor group, I mean, children who had to witness this right after coming out of an orphanage. I mean, they're on a mission to spread love and to spread this message of hope, and to have this be what happens to them. They're in our prayers, they're in our thoughts, and a lot of women and children in that group.
Lisa, the investigation into the messy U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan continues, with the Pentagon and the State Department pointing fingers at each other as who's to blame. Lisa, many members of Congress are simply getting frustrated because everyone's blaming everyone else.
Yeah, well, that just tells us one thing, right, Hal? There's a lot of blame because this was awful. I'm glad at least we're getting that message out of here, because if you listen to Jen Psaki out of the White House, if you listen to Joe Biden, if you listen to most of the media outlets in the United States that are left-leaning, you'd think there's nothing wrong with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. But this tells us nobody wants this responsibility to be on their shoulders. When it comes down to individuals, when it comes down to generals and experts who are involved, they are all saying they did not recommend this. They thought it was an awful idea. And now, obviously, they want to wash their hands clean of the responsibility and the mess that was created there. So, yes, we're seeing the Pentagon and the State Department exchanging jabs as to whose fault this was, and perhaps just creating more chaos and less transparency, as we're always getting from them, and making it more difficult to really pinpoint what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how we even fix this. Look, when they're talking about how to disseminate aid to the Taliban, meaning the bottom line is that the Taliban will be getting aid from the United States, that means we're on our way to legitimizing this terror organization. And to that end, who cares whose fault it was at this point? It's the fact that we are now going to legitimize a terror organization. We're going to have a huge terror headquarters in the middle of the Middle East after 20 years of treasure that we put there. We have veterans to answer to. We have families to answer to who lost loved ones, and billions of dollars of taxpayer money. So a lot of questions and not enough answers.
So, Lisa, how can we be sure that the billions of dollars are actually making its way to the Afghan people instead of the Taliban?
Right, great question. And history proves that when terrorists get money, they put it into more terrorism and not for the people. Look, to a certain extent, the Taliban will keep the lower socioeconomic brackets happy, meaning they'll put up soup kitchens and madrasas. They'll make sure that their fighters are satisfied, whether they're being well fed, they have brides, they have families, and that is how they stay in power, because they keep their constituents happy. For the rest of the people, look at the women, the educated class, people who are involved in the former government, in the former military. They will have a very difficult time moving forward in the new Afghanistan run by the Taliban. And the money, yes, you're absolutely right. This is not going to go for, clean energy and all the wonderful things that we believe that in Washington, D.C. will go for in Afghanistan. So it's a really important question, and we shouldn't just be writing the checks. We should be directing the funds as to where they're going.
Lisa, U.S. President Joe Biden and his First Lady Jill Biden were caught violating Washington, D.C.'s indoor mask mandate. They were actually caught walking through a high-end Georgetown restaurant without wearing masks on Saturday. What's the backlash been like so far?
Yeah, well, there's not too many media outlets reporting this. As you know, we have a very hypocritical media here. So there's a few outlets reporting this. And obviously, look, when you double down on something like the masks or the vaccines, you expect those who are in power to follow their own advice. So you don't want Nancy Pelosi going to a hair salon and not wearing a mask. You don't want President Obama and his cronies to have a party with dozens and dozens of people not wearing masks. And you don't want the Bidens at a high-end restaurant when other people, have to go in and show their vaccine card and wear their masks. And, it's baloney, right? We know that it's not keeping us safe when you wear the mask for 2 seconds and walk into a restaurant, then take off your mask when you're sitting, in close proximity to other diners and eating with your mask off. And the point here is that if you can't follow your own advice and your own rules and your own laws, then they shouldn't be there to begin with, right? And I think the American people are fed up to a certain extent. Some people are just following like sheep, but I know a lot of people are upset, particularly, Hal, in big cities. A lot of parents here in California, for example, a lot of parents are very worried about these vaccine mandates for children. And again, are Gavin Newsom's children going to be vaccinated? And are, this person and that person, all these people who are in government and making these laws, are their children going to be vaccinated? Do they truly believe in what they are saying, or is just another way to control the population and to use COVID as a way to, I don't know. It makes no sense to a lot of people. And I think that people want more transparency and they want more from our administration. And I think that the Bidens are they owe the people an explanation as to why this happened.
Iran is meeting with European Union officials in Brussels this Thursday, Lisa, to discuss resuming the Vienna nuclear talks. Now, these are the same talks that were suspended, since June?
Yes. And you know what, Hal? Why were they suspended? Well, it's because they couldn't come to any sort of compromise, A. B, it's become extremely clear that the Iranian regime is marching towards a weapons program and not stopping. The only thing that they've stopped to do is to flex their muscles and to prove to the world that they are only interested in beefing up their program and enriching more uranium and not stopping. Not to even mention their continuation of putting money into terrorism and to fund different terrorist organizations throughout the region, and to, of course, their human rights abuses back at home. Now, why are we going back to the negotiating table with the Iranian regime? I don't know. The mentality here, the logic is, well, they are very close to getting a nuclear bomb, so we have to rush back into a deal with them. That makes absolutely no sense. If they're rushing towards a bomb, this deal, a meaningless piece of paper, will not curb their behavior or their actions towards the weapons program or anything else. We don't know why this administration and the European Union are so, enthusiastic about getting back into an Iran nuclear deal. But there you go. Thursday, we'll be back at the negotiating table with them.
Lisa, the deadly clashes that broke out in Beirut, Lebanon last week amounted to a massacre, and a Hezbollah representative says its perpetrators should be held to account.
Yeah, it's funny that the Hezbollah leadership is asking for accountability here. Look, Lebanon has been a mess for a very, very long time. You'd have an economic disaster there. It's been bad and it's gotten worse. You have obviously Hezbollah, its influence growing because you have an absence of political legitimacy there from the ruling class. And because we cannot rid Lebanon of this cancerous influence, which is Hezbollah, again, Hezbollah, a terror proxy that is paid for, supported by, and founded by the Iranian regime, operates in Lebanon and terrorizes the people there. They use that as a launching pad to terrorize Israel. And, the people of Lebanon are truly paying for their presence there. And now when you have attacks like this, the Hezbollah, comes out in front and says, we want answers. They did the same thing with the port bombing that happened a little bit over a year ago. They come out in front to have some sort of legitimacy to tell the people that they care for the people, that they want to, that they support them, similar to the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas and the Taliban. All these terror organizations are operating with the same handbook, and that is to show the people, or try to prove to the people, that they care for them and their interests, and they're only there to support the population, which is completely a farce. So we have to rid Lebanon of this threat of Hezbollah in order for there to be a new chapter, a new day, a new future for the people of Lebanon.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because Hezbollah has such a foothold, a stronghold in Lebanon right now. What can we really do in North America to be able to help the people of Lebanon?
Yeah, the only way and what was working for a long time is to truly strangle and to choke off the influence of Hezbollah. And that is through sanctions, through direct sanctions that won't affect the people as much as it will affect direct leaders of Hezbollah. For a long time, I was interviewing people that would say in Beirut, they would go to a local market and they would see little charity boxes that Hezbollah puts up. That's how poor they felt. That's how much they felt that the sanctions were affecting them, that they weren't able to maintain, that they weren't able to pay their debt. They weren't able to pay the suicide bombers, for example. So that shows us that that works. Now, why this current administration is not as interested in doing that is a separate question, but we know what works. We know that it also worked for the Iranian regime to choke them with very targeted sanctions and to not only sanction sectors, but to sanction individuals, and that works. It works, and it's the best and most diplomatic, since they love that word, diplomatic way of choking off these influences.
Chinese military has condemned Canada and the United States over warships in the Taiwan Strait. Tell me more.
Yeah, how ironic, right, Hal? So, if you remember, China spent a few weekends just, pounding that area with their jet fighters, just to show that they have that might over Taiwan. They wanted to show their influence. They wanted to show their presence. And now that Canada and the U.S. have stepped up to say we're going to have our presence here too, China has condemned this, and it deserves a headline, apparently. So the headline is to show that China is paying attention. They have noted that the US and Canada have together escalated the situation with Taiwan. They're not going to just sit back and let this one go. And China's not used to that. They're not used to getting this proverbial slap on the wrist. They're not used to the US and the West, I should say, showing any teeth. And now they're condemning the US and Canada for doing so. So we shall see who's going to make the next move and how this is going to go.
Who's going to blink first? We'll have to wait and see here. Lisa, one of the world's most locked down cities, Melbourne, Australia, will end its stay-at-home orders. The capital of the state of Victoria has had 6 lockdowns totaling 262 days since March of last year.
Yeah, this has been something to follow. I don't know if you've seen any of these clips coming out of Australia with officers actually walking up to people in the park with their mask half down on their face and seeing if there's actually coffee in their cup that would warrant them having their masks down to drink that coffee, that said coffee in the cup. Very sad times, very, very sad times when you have that close of of a watch on a censorship on people, and people don't like it. People appreciate freedom. It's a very old fact that people appreciate their freedom, and with COVID, we have really blurred the lines of what freedom is versus controlled state. The important thing for a lot of people now is to shake this off before it becomes the new normal, to use their own words. They want to shake it off. In Australia, you saw these deadly protests. There are deadly protests. Imagine being beaten up and thrown into prison because they care for your health and safety because you have to wear a mask. It's extremely sad to see how serious this has gotten, how violent this has gotten. I mean, we're happy for the people of Australia to open up, but this has set a very sad precedent around the world with regards to our liberties being taken away from us, redefining freedoms, redefining all sorts of things, and how much of this will stay going forward.
Yeah, the new normal is not so normal. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Thanks again, Lisa.
My pleasure.